If you take a look at how we used to build servers, everything used to be tied to the hardware. So for instance, my network cards came with a burned-in MAC address. My storage cards, or my HBAs, also came with burned-in worldwide port names or worldwide node names. My storage was set up a certain way with either a RAID card or without a RAID card. But the problem is all these settings were literally tied to that server. And when this server failed, I actually had to try to find the exact same configuration to replace it with. Otherwise, I was completely rebuilding my server. And as a matter of fact, I may even have to change my licensing. So it would add an even bigger delay when my server died to bring up a new server because it didn't have the same MAC address, and maybe my MAC address was tied to my licensing for my application. When I wanted to upgrade a server, I basically had to rebuild the whole server because it had different network cards and different disk configurations and different BIOS and different memory and everything else. So with stateless computing, what we can actually do is we can abstract all of those things that make up a server and put it into a profile. This profile is basically the identity of that server. So if I have the identity of that server in a profile and I have things like MAC addresses in that profile and server IPs in that profile and WWNs for storage in that profile and QoS settings and boot order settings and RAID settings, all that stuff is tied into that profile, then I can switch that hardware out anytime I want because all the settings are kept in that profile and the identity of that server follows that profile. And this is the concept that UCS is built on, stateless computing. We get away from managing individual servers and we start managing a profile that can be easily moved from one server to another. When I want to upgrade to a new server, when a server dies, all I have to do is move the profile and it'll spin back up on new hardware with new resources and new memory with all the same settings. So let's look at the building blocks for how we create a profile. With Cisco UCS, the first thing that you do is you actually put things into pools. So for instance, I can create a pool for IP addressing, for a pool for MAC addresses, a pool for my storage WWNs and WWPNs. And then I can draw from those pools from any profile. I also create policies around what the boot order should be or what my boot device is, whether it's boot from SAN or boot from local disk. I might create a policy around the quality of service that should be assigned to the network adapters for the server, what firmware level I should be on, what BIOS settings I should be on. All that stuff can be kept in policies. I can also create templates, for instance, for my ESX servers or for my Oracle server on how many virtual HBAs or virtual NICs that my server should contain. And then when I'm ready to build my server, I can build a template, say for my gold configuration for my company standard for how I build Oracle servers. And then I just grab from that pool for my MAC addresses. And I use the policy for my Oracle firmware and I apply it to the template. Or I use my policy for how many network adapters my ESX server should have and I apply it to that template. And now that I have a known good template, I can build what we call a service profile off of that. So I can literally click on that template and say produce a service profile based on my template, and that server is going to be built and configured based on my corporate's known good policies for an Oracle server or for an ESX server. And I can just copy that template over and over and over again. And I can then apply it to any hardware that I have available to me based on the resources that I want to consume. Because once again, the hardware is completely stateless. It can sit there in a pool and I can move a profile onto it and consume some resources, and when I'm done using those resources, I can actually move the profile off and give those resources back to the pool for another profile to use. So it's very easy just to associate that service profile to any device that I have available. And as you can see, as I mentioned before, when I'm done using it, I just pull that profile off and I give those resources back to the pool. Please join me for the next lesson, 1.10, Understanding Pools and Policies.